Namaste! Story time! Today, let me read a few pages from this book, Pawns in the Game by William Geekar. Specifically, let me read a few pages about the American Civil War. Okay? The American Civil War, as we all know, is when the southern states decided to form CSA, Confederate States of America, and decided that they will hoist their own flag and become a separate country. But the President of America, Abraham Lincoln, said, absolutely not. We are the United States of America, and no state can just walk out of the Union and declare itself independent. So that is how the Civil War began. Slavery was a minor issue. Okay, so let me read a few pages from the American Civil War. As early as the 1820s, many leaders in America had realized that American bankers, that is, European bankers wishing to expand their business into America, were really cruel, inhuman, and playing an extremely dangerous game. John Adams wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson, and as politely as possible, John Adams tried to explain to Thomas Jefferson that these bankers are actually vicious bloodsuckers, and all they want is to withdraw more and more of the money in circulation and concentrate more and more and more wealth in the hands of the very few. And this is what John Adams wrote to Thomas Jefferson. All the perplexities and confusions and distress that is there in the country today is not because of the defect in the Constitution. It is not because the nation lacks in honor or virtue. It is because we have not understood properly coin, credit, and money circulation. So basically, John Adams was directly saying that the government is not understanding credit and money circulation, and the problems in the country are because the government's financial policies with regard to the bankers was not very good. Thomas Jefferson sort of understood that, and a few years later, Thomas Jefferson said, and this is Thomas Jefferson's exact sentence, I believe that these banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. That is, between an enemy army and a blood-sucking banker, the blood-sucking banker is the more dangerous person. Already they have raised up a money aristocracy and they have set governments at defiance. The issuing power should be taken away from these banks and should be restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. The great President Andrew Jackson also had the same complaint. He said if the Congress has a right under the Constitution to issue paper money, then that paper money should be issued by the Congress. Why has it been delegated to some other bank or some other corporation? Let us take back that delegated right and let the government start issuing its own money. These outspoken comments became a warning signal to the international bankers. Based in Europe and expanding into America, the most famous of these bankers was Nathan Rothschild. In 1811, the charter for the Bank of America was up for a renewal. That is, the Bank of America had to renew its license. Nathan Rothschild, the owner of the Bank of America, issued his ultimatum. He said, renew our application or I will cause a civil war. No, it's actually written. Lord Nathan Rothschild actually said this. Renew my application or I will cause a civil war. Cause a civil war. President Andrew Jackson didn't believe that the banker could actually cause a civil war. He decided to call the banker's bluff. He told Rothschild very bluntly, you and your bankers are a den of thieves. You are vipers, Snakes, I intend to rout you out. And by the eternal God, I will rout you out. That is what Andrew Jackson told Nathan Rothschild and all the other bankers. What President Andrew Jackson did not know was that when Nathan Rothschild said, I will cause a civil war, Nathan Rothschild had the power to actually cause a civil war, and that is how and that is why the American Civil War started. The international, I'm skipping a few pages here, Sneha, but I'll loan you the book if you want. The international bankers loaned unlimited credit to all the southern forces. They loaned Napoleon III millions of francs for his Mexican campaign. They tried to goad England and France, and they said, we will loan you the money to support the CSA, that is the Southern States, Confederate States of America. The Tsar of Russia was the first one to oppose this. The Tsar of Russia did not want the bankers to intervene in a civil war that they had caused in the first place. The Tsar of Russia wrote to Abraham Lincoln and he said, I will send you my ships and my ammunition for free because the bankers are wholeheartedly supporting the South, and I cannot see this happening. The civil war dragged on longer than expected, and in a sad state of affairs, even Abraham Lincoln, even the northern states were forced to borrow money. Now, the bankers did not say no. The bankers simply charged 28% interest. 28% interest. उतना तो निर्मला वाला वो ये भी नहीं लेता, मुंशी भी नहीं लेता था. Lincoln tried to break the financial bonds with his northern states were bound. To him, to Abraham Lincoln, I'll read this out as it is. Okay, I'm reading it out verbatim. To Abraham Lincoln, Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 5 of the Constitution was sufficient authority. He disregarded the bankers' warnings. He said that 450 million money was to be printed. He placed the credit of nation as the security behind the money. The international bankers retaliated by causing a bill to be passed through the Congress ruling that Lincoln's dollars, as they were called, the newly printed money, Lincoln's dollars, would not be accepted as payment anywhere in the world. That only their dollars, the bankers' dollars, would be the official currency, and the Lincoln dollars, officially printed by the United States government, is not the official currency. The bankers were so powerful that none of the banks in the USA agreed to accept the Lincoln dollar as a deposit. And since the banks were not accepting Lincoln dollar as a deposit, the shops got scared of accepting Lincoln dollar as a deposit. So gradually, the value of the Lincoln dollar fell and fell and fell. Having beaten down the value of the greenback Lincoln dollar to 30 cents, the bankers then purchased it all. They turned around and bought government bonds with the government issued money that they had caused to fall. And in the process, they made a profit of 70 cents to $1. An article inspired by the international bankers appeared in the London Times. It concerned Abraham Lincoln's issue of his new greenback dollars. If this mischievous financial policy, the President Abraham Lincoln, the leader of North, has decided to issue his own dollars, that country must be destroyed, or it will destroy every monarchy on the globe. By this time, the international bankers also had a huge media wing, and through their own papers in London and the Hazard Circular and several other newspapers, they pushed the same theory again and again and again that Lincoln greenback dollars are worthless, and people reading the newspapers became wary of accepting it. Anyway, as happened, Abraham Lincoln won the war. After winning the war, after making that whole democratic speech, in a later speech, Lincoln said this: I see in the near future a crisis approaching this country that really unnerves me. And this crisis causes me to tremble for the safety of my citizens and the safety of my country. The banking corporations have been enthroned deep inside our system. The banking corporations are causing corruption at high places. These banks are bloodsuckers. They are drawing money out of the lower middle class and poor. Wealth is getting aggregated more and more and more in the hands of few and few and few. A day will come when our democracy will be destroyed and USA will be left at the mercy of a few rich international bankers. Lincoln made this speech. He knew very well how cruel and how horrible and how honestly devilish these bankers could be. Lincoln decided that as soon as his second terms begin, he was the elected president once again, so he had the powers. He decided that he would once again make a concentrated attempt to curb the practices of these bankers, to take away powers from them, and to cancel the license given to the Bank of America. When the charter had come up for renewal against, for whatever reasons it had been renewed, Lincoln decided to cancel the license of the Bank of America and curb the power of these bankers. And Lincoln decided that he would do his best to reissue Lincoln greenback dollars and make them the dollar in circulation. He was going to enact the bill in late April 1965. On 14th April 1965, Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. Very few Americans know why President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Most Americans mistakenly believe that President Lincoln was assassinated by the white supremacists who were angry with him because he had freed the slaves. In fact, this story has been fed to so many people for so long that generations and generations and generations of white children are growing up with the guilt that their ancestors were responsible for the death of a great man like Abraham Lincoln. This is a false guilt. These white children need not feel guilty at all. Their ancestors had nothing to do with the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Generation after generation of whites are simply being taken, guilt. They are being forced into feeling guilty. Now, when John Wilkes Booth, the assassin, was arrested, he had with him a coded letter, and the letter was addressed to J.P. Benjamin, who was the secretary of Nathan Rothschild. John Wilkes Booth was carrying a letter addressed to J.P. Benjamin, the secretary of Nathan Rothschild. It was a coded message. Within 24 hours of his arrest, John Wilkes Booth had agreed that the message was to be delivered to Benjamin. Within 48 hours of his arrest, he had agreed to decode the letter. That is when some policeman who claimed to have received a command directly from God came and assassinated John Wilkes Booth. And that is why Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, because he wanted to cancel the charter of the Bank of America. He wanted to curb the power of the bankers, and he wanted to clip the wings of Lord Nathan Rothschild. Lot many more stories in this book. Lot many more. Especially, World War I and World War II. We'll come back with some more stories some other day. Bye-bye.